Good morning, everyone. So today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about smart living. I'll get into a little definition of what that means to us at Ford. But first, let me mention that it's all about people. The reason we're here this week, if you get anything out of this conference, it's networking with other people. This is a big, broad topic. The technology piece can be complex, for sure, but it's about people. You're going to go back to your offices next week, and you're going to have that golden nugget and realize it's not working right for me, or there's a gap. Having those contacts with people is so key to your journey in this effort, and I applaud Andy and all the people at ARC and all the sponsors for putting this together. So just a little bit about Ford Motor Company. You probably know us because of our vehicles. Hopefully you're driving one. But we're also many different companies within a company. We sell parts and service. If you've got a non-Ford vehicle and you need service, Quick Lane will be happy to service that vehicle. But we also have other companies like Ford Land, which serves the industry with commercial retail rental properties. So it's a large company, very complex company. Yes, we have a lot of manufacturing operations. We have 61 plants around the world. We were founded in 1903, and we've got currently around 201,000 people working for us. Our CEO 2 years ago announced 5 strategic principles we need to act on as a company to our shareholders. And if you really look at those, they boil down into 2 categories. One is we're going to make smart vehicles, smart connected vehicles in a smart world. Those are 3 of the categories of the top 5. The other 2 are about disruption. Disruption from the standpoint of what others are going to do to us and to be prepared for that, and disruption that we can introduce out into the marketplace. IoT is foundational for us to be prepared for all 5 of those key strategic principles. And so our group has embarked on understanding what IoT is and how we can bring it about in Ford. A little bit about myself. I've been everywhere, small companies, startups, to large companies in very different capacities, either working directly as a contractor and so forth. So I've gotten a lot of different experience throughout my years and understand that there's a lot of value in people and the diversity of people. So my team, the slide's really more about my team, is made up of a diverse set of people. We've got computer scientists, electrical and mechanical engineers, we've got futurists, we've got librarians, we have programmers. We have people with degrees, without degrees, with masters, and so forth. So it's all about the people and bringing the right team together that can actually execute on what we're trying to do. So let's get into smart living and talk a little bit more about what that means to us. So in our team, we use futuring techniques to understand where it is we should look at emerging technologies. I report up to a larger group called Emerging Technology and Innovation. And we've branded our portion of the team as the Smart Living team because we're looking at AI and IoT as enablers to the vision at Ford. We've got some labs that we run and do a lot of different types of experiments. We take these experiments and show the prototypes to different people throughout the organization, all the way up to the highest levels, our Chief Technology Officer, our CIO, and even at times our CEO. When we started on this journey, we asked, where do we begin? You know, if you Google IoT, the first thing you start seeing is predictive maintenance. So why don't we jump into manufacturing? Well, it's a little risky when you stop a plant. So we took a step back and looked at where we're at in our journey at Ford overall. And at this moment in time, we're redesigning our Dearborn campus. Ford Motor Company comprises much of the city of Dearborn. We have many aging buildings, some 60 years old. And we're tearing them down and building new buildings that meet the efficiencies and needs of the workforce. So in that process, we asked our question, well, what do our people need in terms of workplaces to be efficient at work? How do they move around from building to building, especially when we've got a micro city within a city? And how do they get to and from work? What are their needs? If we can understand that as a mobility company, not just an automotive company, then we could take that learning, apply it to products, to our office space, and that could then translate into products, which then we can put out into the consumer space. That's going to dictate what we need to build. What we need to build then dictates how we build it. So we have this full cycle where we're looking at internally, what are the people needs? How can we solve those problems? How can we turn those into products we can market? And then how does that affect our plans? So smart, we hear that word all the time. So what does it really mean? Take, for example, your smartphone. Why do we call it a smartphone? Is it because of the advanced processors and all the sensors that are inside of it? I would argue it depends. I think that those things are enablers, but really what makes it smart is when it solves a problem for a person. I used to use this example a lot with a live demo, but apparently Apple has seen my demo and they fixed the bug. But one night I got up in the middle of the night, needed some light, asked Siri to turn on the flashlight on my phone, and Siri, the resident assistant in the phone, couldn't even enable that function in the operating system inherent to the phone. Consequently, I stubbed my toe. That's not really smart. Now, that's just one case. I still call it a smartphone because it does enable a lot of other functionality for me. But let's now give an example of what smart could be. Imagine you're driving or riding in your vehicle, and your vehicle says to you, I see that your right headlamp is about to burn out. And based on the information you've provided to me, I see you're a do-it-yourselfer. You're about to go to a meeting in 20 minutes, but in 15 minutes, I could get you to an auto parts store, get you the right light so that you can change it, or I could schedule an appointment for you. Which would you rather have? You answer you'd like to go to the auto parts store. So the car takes you to the auto parts store. You arrive, and the car tells you, take out your smart device and use it as a viewfinder. As you walk through the store, you've probably been in an auto parts store before and have seen the myriad array of shelves and different options you have. Well, how do you know which one's the right one for yours? Well, with augmented reality, we could overlay information about the parts, direct you to the right display unit, and show you all the parts that are compatible with your car and the benefits and features of that. That's about making a smart solution that solves a problem for people and tying all the technologies together and working with partners and vendors all the way through the whole value chain to make it happen. So again, we look at the future. We have a futurist on team, and actually she uses a lot of the techniques that are used by Walt Disney World to understand where it is we need to go as a company with technology. IoT, again, was one of the high hits, and so we focused on IoT. So let's talk a little bit about IoT. You've probably seen this chart and heard the numbers, 50 billion, and it's moving at a very rapid rate at this point. And it's scary, but the opportunities are enormous. So we asked the question, just how scary is it and how big is it? Well, if you take the number of employees at Ford, 201,000, put them on a chart, you see it doesn't even really show up as a blip. If you take the number of vehicles we have in operation today, again, barely shows up. If you take all the vehicles in the world in operation today, it starts to show up. Then if you look at the human population, it registers. But again, IoT is going to dwarf that. So imagine the challenges we're going to have when you have connected devices, even if only a quarter of them are connected with artificial intelligence, what that's going to mean when they're communicating with one another. We have challenges today with just 7 billion people on the planet getting along. Imagine what's going to happen when we have devices that are learning from one another and acting near the speed of light. So what is the IoT? Well, I heard one talk that I thought summed it up really well. It's two mutually exclusive quotes. One is, there's nothing new under the sun, and the other one is, the only thing that's constant is change. And really, that's what's happening. We've been networking for decades. None of that's changed. There's a lot of standards out there, and you'll talk about standards this week. You've probably already talked about that, and there'll be more discussion on that, and standards are definitely important. But at the same time, the shift is, why are we connecting things? Does it make any sense to connect an ice cube tray? What's the business value in that? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Until we do these things and experiment, we don't really know. So that's the change, is what new data can we get when we connect things that weren't typically connected in the past? So going into some more definitions, what is the Internet of Things? Well, let's start with things, which is typically where people start on their journey. They start looking at all the things you can connect, get overwhelmed, and so they start going on to use cases. And use cases, if you think about it, is really the combination of things. And so now you're multiplying infinity by infinity, because by definition a thing is anything. So it really overwhelms people right away and causes a lot of churn and discussion that really goes nowhere. So we basically categorize them into two compartments. One is sensors. Those are the things that understand what's going on in the world around us and give us feedback. And then there's actuators, and those are things that can do action, whether it's mechanical, whether it's a human who takes the data from the sensors and makes a decision. You can really bucket everything into those two simple groups. What is the internet? It's been around forever. Not forever. My life forever. But the advantage of the internet is the TCP/IP. The IP protocol is what constrains everything into a common transport mechanism and format. So everything below that can be unconstrained, everything above it can be unconstrained. And so that's really what's at the core of this revolution. However, there's some disadvantages with the internet protocol that weren't forevisioned at the early stages of this, and that is the need for power, the need for compute capability, the packet size, and so forth. So other standards have been emerging, such as BLE, ZigBee, and so forth. So now we have the issue of where does the compute go, where does the data go, how much power do we need, and do we need protocol translators? Fortunately, there's some answers. You've heard of the cloud, the fog, the edge. There's a lot of discussion in that area, but again, to break it down simple and to use a people analogy, if I was to walk towards this podium, close my eyes and bump into it, I'm gonna feel some sort of sense, maybe some pain. As a result, my muscles are gonna say, this is not good, back off. And so the natural reflexes are going to cause that muscle to back off. At the same time, a signal is going to go up through my body, tell other muscles to react based on how the muscle that first started the action made me move. And it's also going to send that information up to my brain and tell me a little bit about the surroundings and all the other ambient information, other sensors that I have in my body are collecting all this data so that the next time I'm on a stage and I'm walking blindly, I don't bump into a podium. So the same thing's happening with the cloud. It's where do you need the compute power at the point in time where it's important, and how much data do you need where? So for example, if all you need to know is whether a door is open or closed every hour, not necessarily every minute, you could have that compute power done at the device end itself and only send up what's necessary. But the bigger problem isn't the technology. All these concepts can boil down into very simple paradigms. The big problem is aligning people, because again, people process technology. The people portion of this is the hugest battle you're gonna have. And that is aligning people. And I like to use the analogy of the dog sled. So on the one side, you see the dogs all pointing in the different directions. That sled's going nowhere. What you need to do is get the dogs aligned in the right direction if you want movement. But then you ask, okay, well, what about Industry 4.0? What about all this predictive maintenance? Isn't that about the plants, the efficiencies, optimization of the utilization, preventing downtime, all that sort of thing? Well, yes, it is. But again, what's it for? I ask, why are we manufacturing for people? Who is involved in manufacturing? Usually people. What does it bring about for us? Value, which is money, which is used by who? People. So again, it's great that there's all kinds of different initiatives, and if you're in a large company like Ford, where you have a lot of different divisions, it's great if one group starts doing Industry 4.0 or IoT, but it does have to align to an overall enterprise vision. But then the vendors come in, and they want to sell you the solution, and they have this wonderful solution. You just got to use their app. And right now, it's no different than what you see in the consumer retail space. We've got a lot of different ecosystems, and everyone wants to sell you theirs, and whether it's a conspiracy and they want to trap you into it or not, that's what's happening. You want to be careful when you talk to your vendors to make sure that you're not locking yourself into something that you're going to have to rip and replace soon after. Because also, a lot of times with the vendors, they also want to sell you their own network. Think about the example at Ford where we're redesigning buildings. We have lighting fixtures, we have furniture. The furniture people want to sell you a solution, and they have a network that goes with it. The lighting people have a solution, and they have a network that goes with it. Well, we already have a network. Why can't we use our own? So within Ford, when we started on this journey, and this is no different than any other company that I've worked for, big or small, you have what I call the corporate crazy or change crazy cycle. And usually that's where somebody or a group of people within the company come up with a pioneering idea. They somehow get resources, and then they start discussing about it, and time goes on, and they continue to discuss about it. Things aren't happening, so another group emerges, and they create their own vision of what it is they're trying to accomplish. Pretty soon you have all these people talking and discussing and nothing ever getting done. So I said, we're not going to do that at Ford. We're going to do it different. We're going to start a group called the IoT Enablement Group. And our group is going to look at standards for sure, but we're not going to wait until the standards are where we need them to be. We're going to start moving, and we're going to evolve our standards. And this needs to start with IT because we're talking about the internet. So it's very heavily on systems and networking, but also the other pyramid there, the inverted pyramid, it needs to involve the business stakeholders because they're the ones that are going to determine what the value truly is. So when we started, we found out the corporate change cycle had already started. There was a lot of different groups across Ford working on IoT and people outside of Ford telling us what we needed to do. And so we sought to align that. We worked with Intel to understand where they were on their journey. Intel has a really good framework where they looked at 12 core capabilities across Intel that are necessary for them to enable IoT where IoT makes sense. We took that framework and looked at it across Ford and modified it to fit our environment, and we came up with 11 core capabilities. And you see this touches almost every aspect of IT. So we have different policies and standards and procedures within each of these groups, but we know that they're not all open to an IoT infrastructure that enables the business to do what it needs to do. So what we did is with this enablement group, we invited people in to come across with their ideas, and we weren't the no group. We were the group of, let's look at your idea. Let's see if there's a business case to it. Does it make money? That's what we exist for. If it does, then let's go and enable it. We'll help you do all of the deviations, requests that are necessary to get around our current standards. And at the same time, we're going to evolve our current standards to be more open. If it didn't have a business case, then we would work with them to either find one or put it on the side until one comes about. With that, we learned we needed an application enablement platform. With a company the size of Ford, one AEP does not solve everything we need, so we're going to need multiples. For a smaller company, one may be sufficient. The key thing to remember here is not one system is going to fit all scenarios, so you really got to do your research and understand what it is they're offering. There's many great ones out there that have some really great features in each of them, but at Ford, because of our size, we're going to need at least 3. So where are we today? Well, we're a little more aligned, and then we have one dog on the sled, which is great. They're going along with the ride, but they're also weighing down the sled. So we still have some work to do. The good news is the business is now getting involved. We've got demand coming in from Ford land, manufacturing, material planning, and logistics, and we're moving forward. But no talk on IoT is complete without a little bit of discussion on security. Security tends to be the #1 inhibitor to people embarking on their IoT journey. But let me say, don't let it scare you. Yes, the risk is real. In the past, we would build our fortresses around our IT departments and protect it because we could. But this is the internet of things, not the intranet of things. And we're connected to the entire world now. So how do we protect from that? It's much like the days of the castles when the walls would protect you, but then the trebuchets and the catapults came about. Well, now we got ICBMs coming in. So how do we protect that? And it's not just limited to the Earth anymore because now we've got satellites out there, so who knows who's going to be attacking us one day. But don't let that scare you. The other issue to think about is the harmful interactions. We can plan and think about how all these things are going to work together, but we really don't know when we're talking the magnitude of connected devices out there, especially when they have artificial intelligence. But again, there's ways to work around these and to mitigate the risk. It's all about risk management. You know, there was a time when, for years you hear, don't mix water and electricity, that's dangerous. But when we did, and we did it in a smart way, we've gotten so many benefits. Washers and dryers, dishwashers, we even generate power through water. So there are ways of mixing things that are inherently dangerous with one another in a way that is safe and provides new benefits and values. So just some closing thoughts. Remember, it's about people. Network this week. Get to know all the people in this room, as many as you can, because when you go back, you're going to need those resources to draw upon. Think about what it is that people need and solve their problems. The technology piece, while it seems daunting, it can really be broken down into small chunks and made much easier. And then think about a quote from Henry Ford. He once said, "If I asked the people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses." Now, there was discussion yesterday in one of the panels about, do you ask people, do you not ask people what their needs are? There's value in asking people what their needs are. That's not what Henry Ford was trying to say. Henry Ford grew up on a farm, and so he knew what it was like to take care of horses. He knew what it was like to travel. But he also knew the technology, and in knowing the technology and the problem he experienced as a person, he knew what other people needed as well. And so he introduced a way of getting mobility out to people in a cost-effective manner. So it's important for you to learn the technology and understand that. The people in this room are going to drive this. And know what the issues are that other people face so that you can communicate to them what their needs are. So with that, I'd like to thank you and turn it back over to Andrew.